Welcome back to the Masters of Recon podcast, your top automotive refinishing podcast with your hosts, Corey Kleinfeld
and Ryan Brewer. Enjoy the show, guys.
Welcome back to the Masters of Recon. Today, we continue down learning more about our industry, and we have Aaron Schulenburg, the Executive Director of SCRS, the Society of Collision Repair Specialists. He has been the Executive Director since 2008 and been around the collision repair industry since the year 2000. Thank you for sharing your time with us, Aaron. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Corey. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
So I kind of randomly found this road that I went down. I talked to you a little bit about it. I interviewed Billy from Collision Consultants. I interviewed Jordan from CIC, and we're just kind of all as a group, everybody that listens to the podcast, going down this road of like really learning more about our industry and how much bigger it is than I would say just our little paintless dent repair world. So tell us a little bit about SCRS, a little bit of history about it, what you guys do. We'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're doing is so important, right? Because I think it's really necessary to understand the industry and the relationships between the different aspects of it. Mm-hmm. So SCRS is a national association. We represent collision repair professionals across the United States. We've got over 6,000 members and collectively about 40 state associations that are under our umbrella. Our job is to educate, it's to inform, it's to represent collision repair professionals. Many of our members are small independent businesses, and they need a voice at the table at things that are happening nationally and challenges that they're facing at an industry level. And that's really, I think, where SCRS shines, is we figure out how to develop resources and provide informational outlets and then really speak for those business owners. Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of experience working with all those different aspects that fall under the collision repair segment of the trade population, and so I think this is a good opportunity to help some of your audience learn more about how they can work with groups like ours.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll bounce around a little bit today, but just kind of go with the flow on it. Tell us as an example about what SCRS just did for the collision industry, just so people can really understand like the impact that you guys are able to have on the industry as a whole. And we can, to wrap up the industry, we could say body shops, all reconditioning services, PDR, glass repair, and all of that included, plus insurance, ADOS, all of that being in the collision world. What did you guys just do?
So there's a lot of stuff that we've got actively, sure, kind of that we're working on. I'm assuming you're probably referring to our blend study.
The one we talked about the other day. Yeah, that was a big announcement for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our members have contended, and the industry's really contended for a long time, that the blend formulas in the estimating systems are deficient for basically what they're performing. So all collision repair centers use electronic estimating systems. Those estimating systems, mm-hmm, CCC, Mitchell, Autotex, right, all have guide pages in it, and within those, all three of them have defined blending of a panel, so facilitating that invisible color match from mm-hmm one panel to the next, as 50% of the base refinish of that panel. Okay, and the industry has always said that just isn't reflective of the tasks that we need to do to perform this particular operation. And we, for years as an association, have gone back and put pressure back to the information providers, asking them to revisit those formulas, asking them to take a look at them. And largely those formulas are based on what they claim to be proprietary research that they're not able to share, but have basically communicated that they're very comfortable with keeping those percentages. So despite the pressure, there was really no movement. And ultimately, SCRS said, look, this is a really important issue to address for our members. It's time that somebody did some more transparent research around this topic. And so we connected with all 5 of the North American coatings companies, all the paint companies, to say, look, our members expressed that there is a concern here. They believe that it takes more skill, as much time and more operations to perform a blend as it does to paint a panel. I also think it's fair to say, we could pull somebody in off the street and teach them how to pull paint edge to edge on a panel. It's much more difficult to create that invisible transition within it. It takes a lot more skill and knowledge and all of those types of things. So it was the first time in history that I'm aware of that all 5 of the North American coatings companies came together to collaborate on a research project of this nature. But they all did so without hesitation because this affects their users as well, right? This is something that they've heard and they've contended as well. So we last summer, August of 2022, we held the research in Osseo, Wisconsin at the Global Finishing Solutions Center for Excellence.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really
That
cool. It was
that
nice to pick.
exists. Global
Yeah,
Finishing
there's a
Solution.
number of different places where we could have held it, but that one really was ideal. They had multiple spray areas. They had really, it was just set up in a way that we could facilitate multiple companies spraying at the same time, which was really important. We also wanted to make sure that we did it at a neutral location so that it wasn't, oh, you did it at a shop. We also couldn't take productive time away from the shop for an entire week while we went through this process. And we used data to drive the analytics. We basically picked the most appraised vehicle or truck from 2021. It was a 2018 Ford F-150.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Ford donated 45 new parts that we could use to then conduct the test on, where we would then first refinish each part and then blend them to find the comparative value between. And we actually had the study independently audited by DECRA, which is one of the largest testing, inspection, and certification companies around the globe.
Non-collision industry specific. They just
non-collision industry specific,
okay.
Right? Yeah. So they came in and basically audited our process, and then audited to make sure that we followed our process.
Sure.
And that the times we collected were reflective of what was actually occurring. And then ultimately
basically like fact checked you guys, isn't
exactly right. We wanted to make sure that nobody could poke holes in the study that we did.
Sure.
And by the end of it, 5 companies all spraying, going through a series of routines. What we found was our conclusions came that blending was actually almost 32% greater on average.
And they were at 50%.
Yeah.
And you're saying it should be 132%.
Essentially, yeah, exactly.
That's a big difference.
It's a very big difference. And I think so what's interesting is we presented this at the SEMA show last fall to the industry, and it was not a surprise to anybody in the room. When we asked the audience, when we polled them if this was something that was surprising to them, the vast majority said no, because this was a reflection of what they were experiencing anyway. So we presented it to the industry, we shared the results, and then we worked with the 3 information providers to help make sure they understood how we approached the research project, and then make sure that they understood that this was important to the industry. And all 3 received a lot of feedback from the industry as well as a result of it.
Which three providers?
So CCC.
Those, yes, got it.
Yeah, so the 3 estimating systems.
Estimating providers, yeah, okay.
Yep. So we're still in conversations with all of them. However, last Friday, or maybe it was the Friday before, we actually received. So Motor and CCC had committed to us that they would go through their own research to validate what they found. They responded at the end of Q1 that they had concluded that research, and had promised that by the end of April, they would come back and indicate what the result would be of that. And what they had communicated to us is Motor is essentially removing those blend formulas out of their guide. And CCC is working on their solution on how to now provide an opportunity for the estimate preparer to be able to adjust refinish values, blend values based on the end user perception. So now what a shop has is the removal of data that otherwise was holding them to this discounted amount, and they've got a scientific study that was third-party validated to now scientifically prove to somebody or show to somebody why they may charge for it however they do. So it gives a lot more flexibility to those repair facilities to be able to document what's necessary and be able to recoup on that labor that they were already spending and the materials that they were already purchasing and using. So that's the type of advocacy work. I don't think there's another organization that's similarly situated to be able to coordinate it, that's got the respect and the visibility where you could pull all those national companies together to participate in it, and then the ability to motivate positive change as a result of it.
Yeah, so I hope that gives you guys an idea of the level of stuff that SCRS is doing. It's not just it's legitimate. It's like real changes in the industry. And you told me, I think last time we talked on the phone, this is a 15-year, really, since you started talking about this issue.
Yeah, I mean, we've been discussing this. 15 years is probably the right ballpark. I'll even say these numbers, what you have to keep in mind is these numbers were established over 30 years ago. Now, think about
which numbers, like 50%.
Yeah, the 50% blend formula, right? So think about 30 plus years ago, what the consumer expectation looked like. Think about what the cars looked like. Think about what the colors looked like.
Paints,
think about all the paint. It was lacquer paint, right? So you've gone through all these like refinish system updates since then. You have these incredibly rich, complex colors today.
Dry coats, multi-layered.
Yep. Absolutely. So you've had all this evolution in the car park, in the paint, in the technology, in customer expectation. Because guess what? A customer who has a $90,000 vehicle's expectation is very different than the customer with a $10,000 vehicle, right? Like, and we need to be able to accommodate that expectation. And I'm, I think all aspects of the industry go through that, right? Like, what was acceptable 30 years ago in a lot of different aspects is not acceptable today, right? The level of professional expectation on our collective businesses is much higher.
Yeah, and I think I think a lot of it's awareness too, because people can communicate a lot easier and see, like, it was very easy as in any business, service based or not, to just tell the customer, hey, this is what it is, because they couldn't go check and see other options before the internet, for example, right? I mean, and I want to come back to that, but I don't want to skip completely over a little bit of the history of SCRS. I took several other questions and notes I want to ask you, but SCRS has been around since 1982. So is that right? If I read on the website. So before the internet, before any easily sharing of information where, someone can go check out online reviews, see before and after pictures, all that type of stuff. So again, a lot easier for a business to be like, this is the repair you're going to get, and give it to them. And they're like, okay. So that's one example. But just real quick, talk about just how SCRS started, and why that was an important point in the collision repair history.
Yeah. So I mean, all great points, and go back 40 years, right? So not just before the internet, before email, right? Before people carried cell phones, right?
Before I was alive, first of all.
So you start looking at this stuff and going, the level of communication.
Email, dude.
Yeah, right. The level of communication that was possible was very different. And so, associations became so critical, because that was the gathering point where you could pull people together, and that where the association was able to communicate out and champion for these things. You couldn't just go on to a social media platform and express your opinion.
Have a group.
Right. Yeah. It was much more difficult. And so I think what's interesting is you go back to those early days where it was about helping people understand what was going on around them, right? Helping people understand what the industry looked like outside of your own four walls, and pulling together those businesses that maybe had a common sense, not just in a local market, but in a state, in multiple states, in a region, across the country, right? It was something that facilitated better exchange of information, facilitated bringing the information that those businesses needed to operate well to them, and facilitated the ability to bring those viewpoints to other areas that they needed to be expressed. And that was really the formation of the association. And I think what's neat about it is there's a lot of evolution that's occurred between then and now, as far as what we're capable of accomplishing and how we communicate it, and the tools that we have to utilize to do all that.
Right.
The fundamental aspects of what the association did then and does now remain the same. We are still a very grassroots organization that operates under those principles of how do we help facilitate information exchange and facilitate the communication of
and it looks like your slogan, I guess, of some sort, is repairer driven, right? You want to make sure that it's all based off repairs, the actual repairs, the frontline people. It's not just trying to find profits for companies or marketing, or it's like about the actual repairs.
It is about the actual repairs. I also think it's important. One of the things that's always distinguished SCRS is our focus on collision repair specifically, right? So there are, as you know, as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of different aspects of auto repair. There's mechanical and there's glass and there's all these different things.
Reconditioning, like most people listening to this.
But I think that for us, making sure that collision repairers had a dedicated voice was really important, because the difference between what a mechanical repair facility and a collision repair facility may need or advocate for looked different, still looks different, even though we're doing a lot of similar things. And so SCRS was founded on, how do we advocate for those collision repair businesses effectively, with them as our focal point. And I think that's really where that repair-driven tagline came from, is that it is all driven by those businesses that we're here to represent. Just
out of curiosity, I mean, this, I'm thinking back before I was born, before email, before pagers, before, what was there I know there's before computers. I remember my dad getting a computer, a really old, not before computers, but before everybody had a computer, at least. Was there a system to write? Was there a CCC like a paper version or something? This sounds like such a millennial.
So you would have repair businesses handwriting repair plans, handwriting estimates, really using.
But there was no guide though. There
were books, there were guides, there were
like a mechanical guide. There was like one for CCC, like this is repair time.
I think I actually have some of the old ones sitting on my bookshelf.
I know all the guys that listen that are in their 60s and stuff and been around body shop forever are like, this kid doesn't know anything. But, hey, I admit it. All right, I have not been around as long. Anyway, so that's interesting. The more I think about it, and this may be a controversial thing a little bit for our industry, but as I've interviewed enough people and talked to people throughout the collision world and everything, I've really come to think that just like the body shops themselves are really like the top of the food chain, I guess I could say. Because if you really think about it, whether you go from mechanical to paintless dent repair to glass repair to interior repair, wheel repair, everything, literally everything is a sub for a body shop to some extent. I mean, if you get a car that's smashed up, it goes to a body shop, they're going to sub out maybe a paintless dent repair on one panel. If they're going to bring in mechanical, they're going to bring in someone to replace seats or steering wheels. They're going to bring and so it's interesting and I think that's never felt the case in the paintless dent repair. We've kind of sectioned ourselves off as our own industry, and we really kind of are, but we're really almost under the umbrella of the full collision industry. And I think that's important that we I guess recognize that and try to start becoming more part of a body shop, more part of SCRS and those types of things. What's your take? Because you're not in the paintless dent repair world. What's your take on our industry and where we fit into the collision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting observation, and I think that the collision repair business, I don't know if top of the food chain is the right example.
Well, I don't want to say, I don't want to demean PDR,
but there's a lot of connectivity there, right? We work with a lot of different businesses that perform a lot of different tasks, and we're responsible for a lot of different aspects. And I think one of the neat things or interesting things about collision repair is we're often one of the first automotive sectors to receive new model vehicles, because they can drive off a lot and get into a wreck, day one, right? So we tend to see a lot of things that even service doesn't see, and because there's a cycle there before it gets there. So I think it's an interesting observation, and I've seen an increase in connectivity between collision repair and other sectors or other businesses that provide those types of services. I think you're right, and I think one of the things that maybe we have very much in common is you've got this very large industry with a subset of both that are really chasing how do we do the right thing by the consumer, because ultimately we share the same customer, right?
Yes,
that vehicle owner is who we're serving, and and you've got subsets of the industry who are trying to do a really good high level professional job of doing that well. And then you've got other, admittedly probably larger subsets of the industry who it's organizations like ours job to help bring the information to bring them up with it, right? And so I think that we've seen a lot more connectivity with dent repair and glue pull and all those types of different systems and services through our relationships at SEMA, right? We actually have a lot of PDR folks who come and take part of our education classes and from that have been introduced to the work that SCRS does and go, oh, this applies to my business as well. I feel a sense of connection to it as a result, and I'm a small business owner who benefits from a lot of the same types of information. So I think that when we look at that kind of global independent auto repair space, I think as you start to those different businesses to those types of to the types of things that we do, or the issues that we have, or the challenges we have, or the focus on the consumer, I think you start to feel a lot of connection, right? And it draws in those businesses who have all said, I'm going to prioritize doing it right and serving the customer well and making sure that I'm the top level representative example of my industry, right?
I think that is where I don't know a better word to say it, but the ego, I guess, if there's an ego of paintless dent repair, not to say that as demeaning, because I think ego is a necessary thing, but if there's an ego of paintless dent repair, I think that part of it is that we are fully convinced and understand that our process is the best repair for the customer. And so whenever we can get our hands on those things and save them from the body shop, even though we're kind of a part of that whole industry, but if we can take it away from that body shop, we feel like we're serving the customer's vehicle better. Is that, I don't know how much you know about paintless dent repair, but I'm just curious your opinion on if we're talking about purely serving the customer better, if paintless dent repair it should be that first option.
So I'll maybe like push back on some areas of that and just for perspective, right? I think that when we can do the least invasive repairs possible, it's a good thing, right? If we don't have to disrupt corrosion protection, if we can figure out ways to not to not disrupt the
put Bondo on it,
panels, right? All those things, really positive. Absolutely. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in our own space, right? Where people are starting to go, how do I use either PDR or glue pull to do
Kiko? We'll talk about Kiko in a minute.
Yeah, sure. But like, how do I pull the paint versus, and really minimize damage before I send it off? Obviously, there are things that need to be done. You need traditional repair processes.
100%.
But if we can do the least invasive repair possible and find a smart way to do it, then great. I think but when we're drilling holes in places where holes don't belong, right? That's not necessarily the least invasive repair either, right? And so I think that it comes back to that business that says, I want to be focused on giving the consumer the right repair process possible. I'm going to follow those OEM procedures, whether I'm a collision repair professional, whether I'm a PDR technician, whether I'm, whatever segment I'm serving, I'm going to go through and I'm going to take the time to research. I'm going to take the time to do my due diligence. I'm going to make sure that the repair I'm providing is proper, it's approved, it's recognized as appropriate by the automaker, and that it's not modifying the vehicle in some way that it wasn't prior, right? And so I think you have a lot of folks in your field who focus on that and say, I this is the type of repair I want to provide, as do we, right? And unfortunately, we both also have other folks who go, well, it's just easier to drill this hole, or it's just easier to not look up this procedure on our end, right? Like, and ultimately, easy doesn't necessarily result in the best quality repair, right? So I think that's look in any industry vertical, and you're going to find both of those ends of the spectrum. But I think what becomes important is that you have this population that's listening to shows like yours and who's joining organizations like ours, that they're doing it because they want to be better. They want to deliver high-end, products that they can be proud of. And I think that's where you see a lot of alignment.
Yeah, and that's a good point, drilling holes. I'll talk a lot about that on the podcast anymore, because pretty much people listening to this podcast understand that you don't have to drill holes. Drilling holes, the reason you drill holes for the most part nowadays is just for speed. It's a faster way to do it. So there's man, 99.9% of the time, I would say probably pretty much 100% of the time, you don't actually have to drill a hole to fix a dent. That just became about because of, I guess, the wholesale world and the per car pricing and all that type of stuff, just to be quicker, basically. So, but as far as, best repair for the vehicle and for the customer, if you can get in and out of a vehicle without obviously modifying it in any way, that includes holes, Bondo, paint, anything, and keep everything factory. Paintless dent repair is the way to go, for sure, in my opinion. You're smiling. I'm gonna hammer it a little bit, because if there's a dent that's a 1 to 2 inch dent, and we can get there without drilling a hole, maybe we pull a belt molding off and we slide a tool down between the window. We guard the window so we don't scratch it. We slowly push the dent up from the inside out. Maybe we even take the door panel off and spray some eco back there if we're being like fully official. In my opinion, it's always going to be a better repair than Bondo and repainting that door. And I get there's going to be changes, like when the dent gets bigger. Obviously, there's always a point where it has to go to collision. But would you agree with that point? If a small dent
so that's damage repair, right? So I smile because I think really what you're describing is very similar to a process that would occur in a collision repair facility as well, right? So I don't look at that necessarily as just PDR. I look at that as that's repair, right? And so if you can produce a less invasive repair that minimizes the amount of material you have to apply to that vehicle, collision shops are doing that all day long as well. And so I think we share the same objective of
what do you mean they're doing that?
Repair. I'm sorry?
What do you mean the collision shops are doing that? They're subbing out to
I think that is becoming more and more of a repair approach within a collision repair center today, right?
Using a PDR tech?
Sure. Or using those types of repair approaches rather than just filling it and paving over it and painting it, right?
Sure,
so I think that's where glue pull repair and things along those lines play a pretty important role in the collision space. But I also think holes is maybe a dated example.
Yeah, but I mean, people still do it often, but
people still do it often.
You're not talking to, those people aren't listening, probably.
Right. In the same way that there's on our end, right, our members are probably not representative of a lot of the people who aren't members of the association.
Correct, 100%.
But there are still other things. So you talked about removing the trim panel to gain access, right?
Yeah.
So what sensors need to be addressed as a result of pulling those trim panels, right? Correct. What if you're taking a mirror off, right? Like what cameras or notification systems need to be recalibrated, right? There's a lot of those steps now that blend our worlds together.
Yes.
Because those, you introduce ADAS into some of the most highly removed or common areas of the vehicle, right? Mirrors, headlamps, tail lamps,
front bumpers,
glass, right? All of a sudden, all of our worlds change because we have this obligation to not just perform that repair task that we're used to performing, but making sure that now all the systems are functional the way they were prior to that repair task taking place as well.
Yeah. Because I feel a duty to push for all my PDR techs out there, assuming all ADAS is complete, all removal and R&I procedures are followed according to manufacturer specifications and all that stuff, is a paintless dent repair technician pushing out a dent to perfect, because there's a lot of guys out there that can hide a dent from anybody out there, in my opinion, make it completely perfect. Is that repair better than repainting a vehicle?
I'm going to go back to the least invasive repair is always the best repair.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. Good deal. So how has Kiko changed? And I know Kiko really, paintless dent repair technicians see it, collision guys see it. I'm actually a contract trainer for Kiko, so I go to body shops and train. There's a segment of paintless dent repair technicians out there that think I'm foolish for doing that, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't believe so. I think it's a matter of time. I think that Kiko body techs using Kiko glue, I think there's other versions. Kiko is just the largest and most impactful one, in my opinion.
There's a ton of different brands. Yeah,
there's a ton there, and there have been Cam Auto and other ones out there, but Kiko is the one that's really bridged the gap, I think, from paintless dent repair to. Anyways, I can train a body guy how to do a 70 to 80% repair with glue in a day, pretty much. they should be using that. That's a skill that they should use. And the way that paintless dent repair technicians can set themselves apart from body shops is we can get that last 20%. We can push it back out to perfectly flat without having to put any Bondo, filler, painting, etc. So how, in your opinion, how has Kiko changed the way that collision repairers actually look at fixing or repairing cars?
Look, I think there's a couple ways. One is we want to have every tool in our toolbox that's available to us to do a good job for the customer, right? And so I think having more tools that we're now familiar with and how to use, and processes that, you know, extend beyond what a traditional approach would look like, opens up the possibilities of how we do a repair effectively.
Right.
I think that Chris White with Kiko has done a really amazing job of embracing blending industries that he serves, right? And saying, I see commonality here. I see different businesses that are all trying to accomplish the same thing, which is a quality repair. And how do I
the least invasive quality repair too, honestly.
The least invasive quality repair, right? How do I help advocate for that, right? And I think he's done a really good job of embracing the collision repair industry, and I mean, they're a part of the collision repair industry, right? Like, and I think that's I think that vision, it's the getting it and the being a part of it and saying, I want to support these businesses and support these entities and support schools that are producing technicians, you know, and help educate earlier on these possibilities that can exist, so that we can do a better job of fixing vehicles and serving the consumer well. And I think that's really where they shine. Obviously, it's the quality of them, you know, what they're providing as well. But I think it's the vision more than anything.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with you. So we went back and went down a few roads through some history. I want to go back to the beginning. You said a sentence that I wrote down here, with the blend, all the blending stuff that you guys worked out with. You said it's not reflective of tasks performed, which I think if there's any complaint in the paintless dent repair industry, when we're working with pricing things to insurance companies. Granted, I know that body shops deal with the same issues, but we do too, especially in the hail world. And so not reflective of tasks performed is something that, if we could define for paintless dent repair technicians, is probably the most frustrating thing. So now when we're doing stuff like full glue hole repairs, so on a rail on a vehicle, inaccessible, back in the day, you drill 20 holes, potentially. I've heard stories. I've never done it, but hail guys will drill. Anyways, now we glue pull, right? We don't need to drill holes anymore. We can glue pull even really bad dents along the entirety of the rail without pulling paint off, keeping it all factory, etc. So sometimes when we have our own pricing guides and we try to charge extra for doing that, we get a lot of pushback from insurance companies. Oh, why we don't add glue pulling markups? Well, it's like, well, it takes us twice as long. Why can't we get paid more for doing it, right? Versus you take 20 dents on a rail that you have to glue pull versus 20 dents on a hood that you can push with metal rods on the backside. Whole different ballgame. So that, and then also with the introduction of aluminum panels. Aluminum panels are harder to fix. There's less of a memory, so we have to use more force. We have to push further than needs to be, so it relaxes back to flat, etc. Has there ever been anything in SCRS for paintless dent repair, or maybe we need to get more involved to try to make that stuff happen, about trying to change things that are try to potentially get more money for things that are not reflective of tasks performed, I guess.
Yeah. So I think
sense.
I would answer that this way. That comes down to business education, right? It comes back to making sure that people are aware of it's that inform, educate, and advocate, right? Yeah. I think we do a lot of education programs at the SEMA show, which is our primary big event of the year. We meet quarterly with the Collision Industry Conference, but at SEMA, SCRS develops a very robust education platform called Repair Driven Education. And a lot of times in that, we talk about different business methodologies, and we talk about how to counter objections. You talk about rate, not how to set, not what rates to set, but the thought process that goes into creating well articulated billing practices and rate practices and things along those lines. And I think those are all applicable to all the different verticals that bill for their services. At the end of the day, we're all in businesses that are there for one purpose. It's to sell a service for a profit, right? Like, and understanding how to go about that, how to use numbers to justify what it is that you're doing, and how to overcome objections. Because look, our job, your job, our job, right? Both verticals sell a service for a profit. Insurer's job is to mitigate expenses to the best of their ability. Those are diametrically opposed to one another, and it doesn't need to be negatively, but
everyone's trying to make their profit. Yeah.
Right. So I think if there's one thing that we know, it's that the more you can document, the more that you can create external support for why you're doing whatever you're doing, the less objection that you have, right? And so if we can help educate on how to accomplish those types of things, I think that's applicable to both ends of the industry. And it is part of what draws in, as I mentioned earlier, we've had a lot of PDR business owners and technicians come through our training courses. Some of them are directly relevant, and some of them maybe, it's better understanding, the business that you're working with or whatever else. I don't know that we've had a specific initiative that I can point to that's addressed, PDR billing practices, but I think those on a general level would certainly help and be useful to
or as far as justifying, like you said, they were giving you 50% blend times, but in reality it was actually 123% or 23% harder than it is to just paint a whole panel, or I think it was 23. And 32, so 32 mixed them up there, 32% harder, so pretty big difference. And so I'm just curious, but that's probably something that more PDR techs would potentially get involved in SCRS. So talk a little bit more about SEMA education. Do you need to be a member for one to
Nope.
Okay, so you can go to SEMA and do the education. You kind of talked about what it span the whole it's like a 4-day event, I believe, right? Typically.
Yeah, it does. So it actually spans the full week. It normally starts on Monday before the show opens and runs through the course of the show. We'll, on average, typically have 70 to 80 speakers as a part of our program. It's pretty monumental. And then Thursday, we've got our OEM Collision Repair Technology Summit that really focuses on, but while most of the classroom sessions in the earlier part of the week focus on kind of things that you could go home and implement in your business tomorrow, Thursday is more focused on emerging technology and trends and things that are developing the vehicle that are going to drive where your business goes. So I think we really look at how do we pull in information that's going to be relevant and useful to a diverse population. I do think it's one of the neat things about SEMA. Obviously, you have a lot of different sections there at the show,
everything
from collision to wheels and tires to reconditioning and restyling, right? All those things. And I think that what we see is the education we provide gives good business purpose for a collision repairer to come in and go, okay, I'm going to be able to take this back to my business. I'm going to be able to help either revitalize or energize my staff by exposing them to all this new information. But I'm also going to be able to explore other things that I can do in concert with what I'm already doing in traditional collision repair, right? Ceramic coatings is something that maybe I want to introduce, whether it's through a partnership with another business or by figuring out how to add that as an offering in my detail department, right? Or I want to figure out how to relate to restyling companies or reconditioning companies who may offer other services that, either rely on similar skill sets that I already have in my business or rely on a similar audience, and we can work in tandem with one another to provide that solution to the customer.
But you're saying understanding it is the first step before you add it, or maybe 100%. How you add it, for sure.
So kind of figuring out, okay, how do I expand my business in ways that can help keep that customer coming to me more frequently than the once every 7 to 10 year accident that they may have. Right.
Makes sense.
I think there's a lot of different ways that by working with one another, relying on the different industry segments, that we can do a good job of coming back to delivering good value to the
very cool.
customers.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's huge. CMA education, all week long. Apparently, that's
All week
awesome.
long.
I have to check that
And
out.
then we also, I mean, for anybody who's out there who goes, well, I want to see what this is
Yeah.
like. We
Yep.
also offer it after the fact. In previous years, we've offered it after the fact virtually as well. So if somebody were
That's cool.
were to go, and I can give you the link that you can put
Yep.
in the podcast, but
Please.
rde.scrs.com is going to take them to our last year's online education offering that they can, start to take advantage of now.
Yeah.
And they go,
Very
oh
cool.
man, this is awesome. I want to be in the room where I can ask questions. I want to be in the room where I can relate with this. Then
And
may
you
want
have
to be there.
who's in the room? I mean, I think I know some of the answers, but who, as far as generally, like what type of like insurance companies, who's there?
Yeah, so our education is really focused on the independent business owner for the large part. So you have a lot of owners and managers, operators of collision centers from around the country.
Sure.
You definitely have suppliers and paint companies.
Mhm.
You may have some insurers, not a
Okay.
high degree, but we do have some that participate in that. You see more of them in our OEM Collision Repair Technology Summit because they're trying to understand
Right.
where the technology in the future
Sure.
of these vehicles is going just as much, right?
Mhm.
But you see a pretty diverse audience, but largely it's all catered towards that owner, operator, manager
Right.
of independent repair businesses.
Gotcha. To come back to a question I was thinking about earlier, what else is, I don't know if you're able to talk about it, but what else is SCRS working on? You said obviously they're working on more than just the blending time stuff.
Sure.
What
Yeah.
other big items are there?
So lots of issue-driven stuff, but
Uh-huh.
the other thing we're working on is resources for small businesses, right? I think it's incredibly difficult right now for people in the trades to find the technical talent that they're looking for to come in. And I'm going to assume that's as similar in your population as it is in ours. And I think there's part of the challenge, Corey, is not just competing with larger collision repair businesses. You're competing with other trades and industries that may in some cases be more evolved or offer more sophisticated offerings, retirement and healthcare and all those types of things. And so we set out on a path just about 6 years ago now where we said our members kept saying, look, we know we need to offer healthcare to our employees, but it's super expensive. And it's the coverage is terrible. They can't even really use it, and it's not competitive with other businesses or industries. How can we find a way to both improve what we offer while reducing what we spend on it, right? And is that possible?
Yeah,
so we set out on this path to go, can we use the size and scope and leverage of the association to find solutions that are going to do a better job of that? And in September, after years of work in kind of vetting different solutions, we launched an industry first healthcare program that is available in all 50 states, that is available to any size of business, whether you're a single operator or have dozens of locations. It's just as applicable. And what we're finding is that on average, we've been able to save our businesses average of 10%. What we've found, and 10% can be huge depending on the size of your business, right? 10% of the cost of your health care. The quality of coverage is significantly better. 85% of what most people go to the doctor for is a no-cost service under our plan. So if your labs, imaging, x-rays, generic prescription, seeing mental health professionals, seeing your doctor, urgent care, those are all no-cost services. I can tell you, my wife works in a hospital system and works in the healthcare industry, and what we offer is better than what she gets through that industry. And so now you're in this position where you can help small collision repair businesses offer better coverage than other industries that may pull from a similar talent pool.
Sure.
What we've also found is it advantages those business owners in keeping the technicians that they have. We've seen on average a 25% increase in the employees who actually accept the business's healthcare plan versus their spouses. So what that means is they're more likely to stay rather than go, okay, I'm going to go to somebody else's business for, a small raise because I know I can rely on my spouse's healthcare or my spouse's benefits. What we're seeing is a much bigger uptick in the employees who are saying, wait, this is better coverage. I'm going to choose this, which means they're going to stay. They're more likely to stay within your business.
Yeah, that's
so
huge.
that healthcare program, as well as a retirement services program with 401k, both which are designed to just give more to the people in the industry, making it more attractive and hopefully pulling more people in.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna look at. I've heard about that a few months ago. I saw it on the website when I was doing research over the last week. Definitely gonna look into that myself. Does it have dental and vision too? Out of curiosity,
yeah,
it
so
does.
it's got
Okay, so that's huge because
full suite.
Try to find. I mean, try to find dental insurance in the open market is. I don't know if you've been down that road. It's literally the most absurd thing that exists in the world. It's like $1,000 a month and you can't even use it for a year or something, like for orthodontics. Like you can't sign up and then get your kids braces and then get out. Like it's like a minimum a year, $1,000. It's ridiculous. So I'm definitely gonna check it in. I saw on the website, got to go in, make a login, you can get a quote or whatever kind of thing. But
so I think what's cool about this is, we can make differences for businesses, but when you can start making big differences for individuals, this is meaningful work for us, right? And so when I get shop owners who reach out and go, yeah, I saved money, but the most important part for me was that I was able to improve the quality of life for my employees.
My employee's daughter got braces and he didn't have to work 20 hours overtime, 50 hours overtime a week or something.
When we first launched this, one of our board members switched over and he called me and he was all like, one of my technicians, I had him almost in tears because him and his wife are having a child, right? And they're expecting. Super expensive. We compared what our previous plan was to the current plan, and they're going to save over $6,000 of out-of-pocket expenses.
Yeah.
That's life-changing when you're waiting for a kid to arrive and all that stuff, right?
Big money, dude. Yeah, that's huge right there. And that's gonna all the guys listening, I'm sure, are gonna go just SCRS.com, I believe it is. Yeah, SCRS.com.
So you can get to the
drop down, you can see it in there. It's
you can drop it down, but SCRS.com/healthcare will get you straight there. SCRS.com/401k will get you to the retirement services, right? There's a lot of stuff that can we make issues better? Can we make the resources better? Can we make the quality of life better within the industry? Those are all part of what we're trying to accomplish.
And I think something a lot of painless dent repair technicians would agree with. I think to be able to have a healthcare or 401k situation without having to be a part of a massive company is a huge benefit, because I think the way that most of the world has gone is that if you want benefits, you have to work for, call it a Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 company. But I think in the painless dent repair space and in the collision space, having those small independent shops, whether small being 2 people or 100 people, still very small in the scope of the US, is very important, I think, to a lot of people. I think most people in painless dent repair space don't want to be involved in a massive company. And in the collision repair space, there are, a couple very, very large companies. We don't have to mention them, but I think there's a lot of people that don't want to work for those people, and they want to work for Joe's Body Shop that has 2 locations and it's family run. But it's really hard when you have to go to Affordable Care Act to get insurance. Yeah. And it's literally thousands of dollars. The out-of-pocket maxes of $8,000. I mean, it's a real thing.
And that's what we wanted to change, right? Like I'm going to go back to that beginning history, Corey, right? Like we are a grassroots organization that represents a largely grassroots industry, right?
The small shops.
This group, our businesses are technicians that became business owners, sometimes by choice and sometimes by circumstance, right?
Yeah, sure.
Technicians that turned business owner, that owned a family business or own a family business, that want to keep that business in the family. Like, I think people gravitate towards that family aspect, that community aspect, the fact that we're serving our communities at a very local level. And that doesn't mean that we're any less sophisticated of a business, but it does mean that, like, I agree with you. I think many people want to be more than just a number in a corporation. They want to work where they communicate directly with the business owner, but have all those same opportunities. And if we can give those opportunities,
and they've been taken away, dude. They just have over the last 10 years. I mean,
and if you can work for a business where you're one of 10 employees and you have world-class healthcare, why wouldn't I gravitate towards that? If I can, work for a small business and be part of a retirement fund that's got over $20-30 million in it rather than $150,000.
Yeah.
I now have access to fees that I
The
would never be able to
the management's a
access.
little better, let me tell you. Yeah, exactly. I'm
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
all that's good. You're going to do more with your money over time, right? You're
Yeah.
going to set yourself up better for retirement. And I think the goal here is, how do we advance the ball for all these businesses? How do we make them stronger? How do we pull everybody under one tent, especially everybody who's looking to make this industry better for the people that we serve?
Yeah, 100%. That's huge. And I think there's a big segment of just people in America that want to see, just to go high level here, that want to see America more like that, more localized small business owners, all that. It's not just 3 body shop companies that own all body shops in the world, or 3 companies that own all food distribution or whatever. I think we need that small localized, because I think if you're repair driven, if you were to compare the small localized versus the, multiple $100 million companies, there's a difference in the quality of customer interaction, I guess I could say.
I think
maybe it's unfair to assume that, but
I think the reality is that in all things in life, there, as you get, I think size, you have business models that are built on size and scale, and you have business models that are built on customer service and quality, right? And you're gonna see varieties of all of those. But I think if we can find ways to give small independent businesses the ability to compete and win, they're going to do very well. And that's where our history started, and it's where we continue to really find ways to
love it,
to push it forward.
Love it. Couple more questions. I saw a tab on your website about legislation.
Sure.
I didn't really figure out much about that. Is there stuff that SCRS is doing with, I guess, legislation being laws of states in the country, or what's
yeah, so I think there's a variety of different areas that we play an important role. So I mentioned that we have roughly about 40 state associations under our umbrella. I think what's important to note is that insurance is governed at a state level. And so those state affiliate associations play a really important role. There is legislation that is out there today in all sorts of different states across the United States that is being advocated for, that affects the collision repair industry and affects insurance law and things along those lines. And our state associations are really responsible for driving and advocating for that at a state level. SCRS, where SCRS plays a role, is helping to pull them all together so that they're operating from similar knowledge bases and playbooks. They understand, an association in Virginia understands what's happening in Texas. What's happening in Texas is familiar with what's going on in Washington State, right? And so you see all the commonality between the different efforts, and they're able to communicate with one another, maybe understand what objections exist from opponents before they even get there, all those types of things. So I think we play a big role with that, both in the affiliate engagement as well as through our news source. If anybody out there reads repairerdrivennews.com, we publish that news source. It's part of our commitment to making sure that we're connecting the dots for the folks in the industry. So I think those are really important types of conversations to be having at a national level. When there are federal level initiatives that are important to get involved in, SCRS will certainly get involved, right?
You have an example of those? I'm trying to, I can't think of any,
so under our last administration, there was an attempt to sunset consent decrees, and obviously our industry, there's a consent decree that was established in 1963 in the collision repair space that's been fundamentally really important to a lot of collision repairers, that addresses insurance behavior, and that was on the docket to be sunset. And so we underwent an initiative to basically prove the value. We had dozens of members of Congress write letters in favor of it after spending a great deal of time bringing collision repairers to the state or to the federal capitol to talk a little bit about why this mattered, and ultimately resulted in the Department of Justice saying, hey, we're going to take this one off the docket to be sunset. We're going to maintain it, those types of things. Other conversations. Big deal. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Affecting federal legislation is not a small task, I would imagine.
Yeah. And in that case, so sometimes it's legislation, sometimes it's regulation, right? Sometimes it's having all those entities understand the importance of why what's on the books matters.
At the very bottom level.
Yeah,
At the customer level, yeah.
At the very
Yeah.
bottom, at where it matters to their
At where
constituents,
where you feel like you have no voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think others is helping to draw attention to issues. So there's a lot of talk around right to repair, initiatives. I think the reality is, from our vantage point in the collision repair space, independent repairers absolutely have the ability to repair cars today, right? And I think that many of the folks who are driving the I'm using air quotes here for those listening, right? The right to repair initiatives aren't really after the right for an independent business to repair. They're after the right for big businesses to access data, and they're using repair facilities as a mechanism to champion, because that will tug at the heartstrings of the people making decisions.
Sure.
And so I think it's important to have voices that kind of demonstrate that we have the ability to repair vehicles correctly and effectively today. Our biggest challenge isn't access to data in the collision repair industry. It's the pushback we receive from bill payers against the necessary steps that we need to bill for to perform those repairs.
Amen to that, dude. I think everyone can agree on that for sure.
Yeah. So I think, there's politics is messy, right? And people who have a prerogative are going to use whatever platform they can to advance the ball forward as it benefits them. And it's important that organizations like ours keep an eye on those issues, and that we continue to be a representative voice of those small businesses we represent, because those shops aren't going to have that same microphone or the same halls to echo through and things along those lines.
Yeah.
So when we can, we will.
That's great. So one more question, and then we'll talk about how to join SCRS. I'm going to combine these two, but what does the future of collision repair look like? And then I'm going to throw in EV with that, because it's that, whether we like it or not, or you agree with it or not, we're being pushed down that road. So combine those two together: future of collision repair, and then how is EV affecting collision repair and SCRS and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think if I'm a repair business who is willing to make the necessary investments to fix vehicles properly, that's willing to make the cultural commitment that I want to do it right, and I'm going to take the steps that are necessary to do that, I think that the future of collision repair is super bright. Yeah, I really do. I think there's a ton of opportunity, and I think that there is a lot of space for people who are willing to make that commitment and make the investment and create a business model that sustains it.
Yeah.
If I am somebody who wants to hold on to my past of being a general practitioner and being able to work on everything without continued training, without continual investment, I think it's going to be a challenging road ahead. Yeah. And I think that's just the reality. EV aside, I think that's true.
Oh, I think it's always been true.
Yeah, I think EV and ADAS.
I mean, unibody, talk about the unibody time. Is EV unibody equivalent, like to how much it's changing the way repairs work? I mean,
but you have so I think OEM certifications are driving those quality expectations up in a positive way for the consumer and in a positive way for the industry. But you still have, so while you have some businesses who are going, how do I adapt for ADAS and calibrations and safety features and electric vehicles, right? You have other businesses who still haven't figured out how to weld properly, right? And so you have this kind of like polar ends of the industry. Yeah. And we need to do, I think our job as an association is, how do you lift everybody up from where they are today, right? Okay. How do you take the folks who haven't gotten there yet and get them closer to that goal? How do you take folks who are at the cutting edge and leading the way and help them carry it even further? And I think that's really what our obligation and responsibility is as an association. But I mean, I think EV is a challenge. I don't think it is an option. I think you're obviously going to see automakers go there. Do I think it's the answer that everybody's looking for? No, but nonetheless, it's here, right? And it's only going to continue to evolve, and we're going to have to figure out ways to be responsible. And I do think what's important is that we find ways to introduce to the conversation, as people look at infrastructure money to support charging systems. we also need to make sure that we have a repair community that's capable of fixing these vehicles and has invested in the equipment to do so and has invested in the training and talent to be able to do so, right? Like those are as important as charging stations are as you get a larger population of the drivers who are driving electric vehicles.
It's as or more important, but it's not as sexy. Like obviously, like it's not as immediate because like you have to charge, but people don't realize that they don't want to take their Tesla, Rivian, Lucid and give it to a body shop that has never worked on one because the odds they get a fully repaired and safe vehicle back is low if you don't know what you're doing. Or I mean, that's just the reality. I don't think people give enough credit to how complicated the process is. They're, it's like, oh, they're just going to replace the whatever.
It is not fixing a traditional vehicle, and I do think that there are a lot of safety considerations that need to be made. And I think what's great is you have companies, Rivian, we haven't even publicly announced it yet, but it's official. Like Rivian has joined SCRS as a new member. Most of the automakers are members of SCRS.
You heard it here first, guys.
Exactly. But so here you have kind of one of these EV automakers at the leading edge of what's going on in the industry, who's also prioritizing, I want to be involved in the collision associations, I want to make sure that we're providing the information that we need to, we want to make sure we're building the frameworks and taking feedback so we can do a good job of effectively doing that. I think that's really important. I think that's where I take a lot of pride in what we do as an association when we start to see businesses like that prioritize the work that we're doing in the same way that a business of 10 employees is as well, right? And I think when you have this central hub that's pulling everybody together, it's really important.
Yeah, I think Rivian, I mean, I know Rivian because I'm working on one starting tomorrow and I needed to order a part for it. So I went down the road of doing that. And you have to be a certified shop through Rivian. There's no other way. There's one in all of the greater Sacramento area, which encompasses this shop, over 2 million people for sure, maybe closer to 3. There's one shop that's approved to work on Rivian. So, and there's one in San Jose, which is the Silicon Valley Bay Area. And there's a lot. I mean, I see them out here. There's a lot out here. So like, it's interesting that those EVs, the way that they're changing and the way that they're requiring a specific certified shop to do it, not just take it wherever. So
but a lot of that again comes back to making sure that the shop that you're sending that customer to has the training, equipment, knowledge development, all those things
to know how to do properly. Fantastic. I appreciate it. Very articulate. I learned a ton, and I know everyone listening has learned a ton. I hope I asked all the questions that everyone's yelling at their phones right now. Anyways, how do you join SCRS? And if you want to talk about the cost of doing that and just anything along of being a part of the organization.
Yeah, it's super easy. SCRS.com, from the homepage, you'll see plenty of options, links to join, right? So there's a banner across the bottom. There's an option at the top. You can join right through the website. In fact, we encourage most people to join through the website because then they can set up their member profile and everything right there online. It's $475 a year for your first location. If you've got multiple locations, it's $150 for each additional location. Honestly, I think the value that is derived as a result of membership far outweighs the cost. And our goal has always been never let cost be an obstacle to having somebody be a part of this. So yeah, $475 a year to join. If you're going to take advantage of, anybody can shop the healthcare, but you do have to be a member to participate in it. Anybody can get a quote on the 401k, but you do have to be a member to participate. So you could go and say, hey, I want to shop this healthcare plan, see if I'm going to save money. And if I do, now I'm going to make the decision.
Then I'll join. Yeah,
so that I can open it up. Right. Cool. Like prove your own ROI, prove your own value proposition. But I'll tell you, I think just from the access to information, the visibility into what's going on in the industry, those membership dollars are then used for resources like funding our news source. I mentioned repair-driven-news.com, funding free programs to the industry like Database Enhancement Gateway, which is a resource that we developed that was designed to provide crowdsourcing to basically challenge any errors, omissions, or inaccuracies in the estimating systems. You submit an inquiry. We have somebody on the other end who's going to work directly with the information provider to correct those vehicle-specific issues and then respond back. We have tremendous results in that. It's a free resource. So it's degweb.org. It's a free resource for the industry, but it's funded by member dollars from us and one of our counterparts, AASP. And so that's a really important program. It also funds things like, we have a pretty robust library of information on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/SCRS collision. Free videos that explain the repair process, explain different steps, whether you're a collision repair center or a PDR business. I think that there are explanations in there that are going to serve your customers well to help them understand why, when you have to remove a mirror or a headlight or a trim panel, why you're going to have to go through an ADAS, calibration or a scan process or things along those lines. So I think there's a lot of different resources out there that support of the association helps fund to make the industry better.
Makes sense. Fantastic. I had a lot of questions and you answered every single one of them very well. I very much appreciate that. If you have anything you'd love to add before we wrap up here, I think it's been over an hour, actually. That was a quick hour. Do you have anything to add?
Here, I'll challenge you all. I mean, come be a part of the association, come be a part of the industry.
I think you'll have several dozen people sign up, I believe.
Yeah, I hope so. But I think more than anything, I get people ask all the time, okay, I became a member, now what can I do? And I think this advice serves for anybody in the collision repair space, but also in the PDR space. Help carry the water. So if you like what Corey's sharing, the information he's bringing to the table, find other PDR folks within your community who may not be at your level and bring them to the podcast. Help expose them to the information so that you're strengthening your industry. You're broadening their perspectives on what PDR is or what the business looks like or what the industry looks like. Bring them to SCRS, bring them to Masters of Recon, bring them to the SEMA and help expose them to the education. Invite them to these events that will help level up your competition, because stronger competitors, stronger people in your marketplace make the industry stronger as a whole. And if your objective is that consumers are better served, helping others in the industry find that as well is part of that mission. So that would be my challenge to anybody listening.
Amen to that. Thank you very much. All right, guys. Till the next time. See ya.